I had this flash before my eyes and just thought, I can't believe I was like that. I would never want children, any children, to feel that way, let alone my own. And then I had that moment where I go, oh my gosh, if this is what I've trained him to do, that's what will happen to my grandkids. And that's what will happen to my great grandkids. If I don't change this, it doesn't stop with, it has to stop with me.
I am so excited to be here with Nate Feathers today. I saw his Instagram handle, which is Dads Don't Babysit, and pretty much instantly was a fan. So thanks, Nate, for coming and talking to us at the Giant Institute for Parenting.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was a video that really grabbed our attention where you were holding up signs talking about the fact that you used to be an authoritative dad and have made a shift. And I'm curious to hear the story of what inspired that for you.
Sure, yeah. I actually, yeah, I would say very authoritarian, however that is, like whatever it is where you tell them what to do and they're supposed to listen to you, or that's how you think that's going to go. I was that dad. And so I have 5 children, and my oldest one is 19. So we took him to college, and I came back home and I sat on the front porch and I was like, it's like, I had that it's over moment. And it's not that it's over. And I even did a video on it. I'm like, it's not over.
Yeah.
I don't have him all the time. And it was actually, he is like, so I was married before and had two children, and then and got remarried and have 3 more. So 5 total for me. But because of that, I didn't have him all the time as it was.
Yeah.
And so I'm constantly, doing whatever I can to influence him in when I had him. And I don't know, it was one of those moments where I was like, I regret so much. I looked back and I can see him. It makes me tear up. I can see his like fuzzy little hair. I can see him walking across in the dark in the bedroom, like coming to like the bed, right? I can see that stuff. And like just stuff like that where I'm like, I was honestly like looking back, I'm like, man, I was just mean. Like, oh, it's awful to think about. I expected respect and I expected like immediate obedience. And that's what I grew up in. My
I
dad
was just
wasn't
going to
mean.
ask, was that the kind of conditions of your childhood? What was that
Absolutely.
like for you as a kid?
Well, what's crazy is I always tell people I didn't have a hard childhood. It wasn't bad. It wasn't abusive. Like those kind of things. Like it was none of those things. In fact, when I look back on it, I look on it with fondness because I'm like, I had a good childhood. But like all the things that our parents do, it programs us as to how the world works. So in
Yeah.
my head, like I was the most laid back human being. And then all of a sudden I had a baby, and it's like the whole world, my whole life changed. It's like all of a sudden my mind shifted to the way my upbringing was. And it's like, well, that's how it's supposed to be. So that's what it's going to be. And I mean, holy cow, it just made me mean because
Yeah.
I expected immediate obedience. Like if I interrupted what he was doing, then like I didn't care. Like I'm like, well, I'm dad. I'm telling you to do something, so you need to do it now. Now, granted, I still fall back to that. So I
Yeah.
have to always work against that because that is a default setting.
Right. I guess
But
this is my question because so just to circle back for a second. So as
sure.
a child, was your perception like this is how it's supposed to be? This is how adults are supposed to treat children? Or did you have a sense of, injustice and righteousness?
I think as you get older, you get that way, right? So
Yeah.
I remember like you didn't talk back to my dad. So I remember I think you get two different kids. You either get the acquiescent kid who just like stuffs it down, or just acquiesces and gives up, or you get the kid that's defiant in front of you.
Yeah.
I was the one who stuffed it down.
Yeah.
So I felt probably there was injustice as I got older. But I think with little kids, like from like 0 to like 8, before what I call the subconscious window closing,
Yeah.
um, 0 to 8, I think it's just the water that the fish is
Yeah,
swimming
it's
in.
like whatever you are is what you know. It's all that is.
Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah, my kids don't know life any other way than the
Right.
way I present it. And
And
so,
children are literally wired at the brain level
uh
to attach to their primary caregivers, regardless of what's happening in the
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you watch like ok I hate that I can say this, but how many times have parents, like, spanked their kids and they're visibly hurt and sad and they're crying, and then they reach up to be held by their parents.
yeah,
Like, oh my gosh, it makes me like I feel like I'm gonna cry right now. Like that hurts my heart because I can see my oldest when he was little doing that. And I can see other kids of other like with other parents doing that exact thing, same thing. So you spank this kid and then they want you to hold them because they're hurt and they're sad and they're scared. And you're the one who perpetrated all that. And for me, um, like I just like I literally, you have they talk about that like flashback moment where like my life flashed before my eyes right before I felt like I was gonna die.
yeah,
I didn't have that, but it was like that for when I realized my oldest was done with being at home,
yeah,
and I regretted so much
yeah.
that and the thing is, so I have one in college and one in diapers, and so I have the
You
ability
actually
to
have the chance for a do-over. Most of us
exactly.
don't.
Exactly. So that's what changed it for me was that I was like, I'm gonna fix this for the other ones. I can't like, and I've apologized to the oldest, and we've like, there's still stuff that he and I will definitely have to work through for probably years.
Yeah,
But I'm like, I'm changing how that goes for the rest of them
yeah.
because I just see it so
I want to be
differently
on that
now.
step again, feeling that way.
No, I do not
So
want to
what
sit on
did
the front
you
porch for the next one doing that. Mm-mm.
what did you do? Did you go read books? Did you find mentors? How did you make the shift? Because this subconscious programming that you're talking about the way that we do anger, the way that we speak when we're stressed, the way that we expect compliance and obedience, that's hardwired stuff. That is
Mhm.
hard to change, Nate.
Yeah. I think that it was one of those. So you either have like a repetition to change your subconscious mind, right?
Mhm.
Or you have a life event. Yeah. So I really feel like it was a life moment where uh I mean I kind of see it as a traumatic experience. I had this whole flash before my eyes and just thought, I can't believe I was like that. I don't ever want to do, I would never want children, any children, to feel that way, let alone my own. They need to. And then I had that moment where I go, oh my gosh, if this is what I've trained him to do, I like that's what will happen to my grandkids.
Yeah,
And that's what will happen to my great grandkids. If I don't change this, then it doesn't stop it has to stop
yeah,
with me. And
that's right.
so I mean seriously, I say it, it's funny because sometimes I'll say something on Instagram and then 2 days later I'll be doing that exact thing and I'll just be like because I'm constantly trying to, I mean obviously it's an evolution, right? So you're
Yeah.
trying to become something else
Well, you
and go
can't
through that.
change what you're not aware of. And I think awareness is really the first step. Like, wait a second, this communication style is harmful.
Hmm.
This way of relating is not how I choose to relate going forward. And
Absolutely.
that's, I think, how it does start to shift is you're like, oh, there I did that thing again. Let me
Uh-huh.
try again.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, that's exactly it. And then what's crazy is then that's when books started showing up. That's when podcasts started showing up. And that's when, I do a lot of, I listen to a lot of YouTube or I listen to YouTube, which is weird. I could just listen to podcasts, but that's when even certain things on YouTube showed up
Yeah.
that, I mean, like specifically like Dr. Shafali, I'm assuming you've probably heard of her. She interviewed on impact theory. I've watched impact theory for years. And I'm like, oh, this must be a new one. And I look and it's 4 years old, but it showed up in my feed after that happened. It's just like when
So
you
like
start to do
life
something.
started to give you exactly what you needed.
Yeah. And I
I
mean,
love
since
what
then
you
it's just done
said.
that.
I really believe that if we don't do the work, then we're putting that burden on our children. At
Absolutely.
some point, culture is evolving, humans are evolving,
Hmm.
understanding about emotional health, relational health, spiritual health
Right.
is more abundant than ever before. And I think this is also why our kids are demanding us to show up differently because they're like, I'm seeing the videos on YouTube too,
Hmm.
and this is toxic and I will not
Hmm.
tolerate it, mom.
Right. Yeah.
I love it. I'm like, bring on the empowered children, please.
Right? That's massive. And they have that right. So
Yeah.
that's something too that I didn't. it's funny because my dad has said that about his grandkids, that they have the right to call him out, but I never felt that way.
Wow.
And the truth is, they are human beings. They have every right to look at us and go, something doesn't sit right with the way you talk and the way you act.
Yeah.
Why? And they should be allowed to call us out that way, just like we should be able to call them out, you know?
I posted a reel recently where we talked about some studies that talked about the impact of fatherhood empathy and compassion on
Mm,
children's brain development, on
mhm,
their emotional intelligence factors. And the comments were quite telling. There were a lot, we said, share this with a dad who's doing great. And of course, there was a lot of that, but there was also so much longing and hurt in the comments.
mhm,
I didn't have a dad. My child doesn't have a dad. My child's dad isn't interested. My
mhm,
child's dad is, yells at them all the time and won't, listen to me about parenting more
mhm.
peacefully or gently. I'm curious how your reception has been.
It's been interesting. I think that what I've been able to see is that there are fathers rising to that level. There are dads, like, I don't want people to think that there are not dads out there doing what I'm talking about. Because there are so many that I've connected to. It makes me feel less crazy, right?
Yeah.
But I can go through comments on videos about specifically like spanking or yelling and things like that. I'll be like, that's a dad, that's a dad. Or it's just a man. It might just be a man who
Right.
has an opinion. And that's okay too. And I'm usually pretty calm with that. But I mean, you get called anything from snowflake to the reason that kids are the way they are.
This
And
is why there's school shootings.
yeah,
This is
yeah,
why kids are so entitled. I'm like, no, like no
yeah.
loved child.
Yeah, right? It's totally true. Yeah. And I think the biggest thing for me is that I am a father who is willing to say, and my whole concept is I'm a warrior in a garden. Like I am a savage man. And that's where men I think are afraid.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't want to be a woman. And I come from a traditional mindset. So I believe that there's it's two separate like whole roles. And what I love is that I can literally look at my wife and say, you are superhuman. We made a baby and you grew the baby and then gave birth. There's so many beautiful and amazing things about women
Yeah.
that I love to ascribe all power, like all the power that a woman has, to that role.
Yeah.
On the same token, men have this massive role, and you can see it in statistics about how they play a role in their children's lives.
Yeah.
That when you are this, like, again, I just saw a reel today that I posted, that I reposted, where the guy said that, like, people who have gone after children or that are child predators, the one guy that was interviewed, he said, I always looked at the family dynamic, and if the father was any kind of threat, I left it alone. And the guy said, so dads, one, you need to be a threat. I absolutely ascribe to that. You should be so savage that no one's going to mess with you. Like I go to the store, I don't even think about being worried about like someone coming after me. I'm not a massive dude, but I'm built in a way that I don't look like you'd want to mess with me. And
Yeah.
that's the way I feel about men. We should look that way. We should be that way. Like I should be scary enough that nobody wants to come mess with me or my family. And then what else he said that I loved is that you should be so involved that if someone's looking in, they're going to see that a savage man is
Wow.
watching over his family. Right there, every guy, I want every guy to hear it. Be the most gentle human being inside your house, but be the most savage, scary human that stands at the door
Like
and says,
protecting your
yeah,
victim.
yeah. And what's
Yeah.
fun, and I haven't shared this before, but my last name is Feathers.
Hmm.
And I got I can't remember who sent it to me, but they sent me this historical review of the Feathers clan, and
Yeah.
it said that when there was war coming to them, they would put the Feathers in the middle at the front because they're like, if they're fighting for their family, they are the most savage human beings in our clan. And I'm like, that's my bloodline. So for me, like it sits hard on me that
Yeah.
I'm the protector of my family, in so many ways, by what goes into their minds, what goes into their hearts. And if that's the case, then why wouldn't I be the most gentle, amazing teddy bear
Present.
to all of my kids?
Right.
so that they feel that and they're
They're
always
gonna run
safe.
toward you,
Hmm.
not away from you.
Yeah, it gets me
Yeah.
hyped when I talk about it like that
I mean,
because I want every
honestly,
man
I
that
think
way.
this is why so many women are exhausted, so many
Mm.
moms,
Hmm.
because that presence isn't felt, everywhere.
Right.
And so having to play all of those roles in the absence of a strong masculine presence is exhausting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you like at the risk of, of really offending people,
I
you're
know.
not built for that. You're not built for it. Like I'm built for that. My wife is not built for that. If
Yeah.
I don't do my job, it's harder for her to do her job. You
Yeah.
know, that's that team thing, and that's part of the masculine protector presence. Is unfortunately it falls to moms a lot, single moms or dads that are uninvolved. But that's where that's where I get excited about dads who are rising up because I'm like,
Yeah.
you get it, and you
Totally.
like
We
we can
just
crush it
had,
that
so
way.
we start parent coach training cohorts a couple times a month. And
Hmm.
I woke up, we have a trainer in Australia, and she's like, "You guys, Jai 147 has 4 dads." And we looked, and it was a record. We've never had 4 dads in
Yeah.
16 people in a cohort. So a quarter of the cohort
Yeah.
is dads. And I have to tell you, our entire team was like,
Right.
"Love
Yeah.
it."
Yeah. No, I love that. That's massive.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, more guys do need to step up and dads need to take a role. Like one of the things I think about and push guys to do is I'm like, find your purpose because you need to have a purpose. If you're just doing a job that's mundane that you hate, you're
Yeah.
going to check out of all of your life. And that includes your family because it'll drain you. Doing that job will drain you. And then when you come home, you have nothing that you even want to give to anybody. Like find what it is that makes you feel alive because your family benefits from that even if you're not at home for that job,
Yeah.
because when you come home you'll have vitality.
Mm.
And there's so many, I mean, what do they say, like in the United States like 75% of people hate their job. So there's so many men that are doing that just hate everything. So when they come home, they're angry, they're frustrated, they're tired, and all of that stems back to what they're doing. I don't know. Like I like that's where my head's been a lot for guys recently on the whole
I
savage
feel
outside of the
that.
house.
I really do. That burden, right? Like it's a
Mm,
different burden of providing and thinking that you need to compromise your energy and capacity and integrity even
right.
in order to provide. Like that doesn't sound like a very enlivening life.
No.
Our audience, is primarily moms. And I've heard over the years so many say, I'm committed to peaceful parenting. I'm committed to being the change, the one who
Mhm.
breaks generational cycles of harm and trauma and emotional wounding. And my spouse is not on board. They
Yeah.
think they have to be the traditional, kind of drill sergeant parent. Do you have any advice for how someone might broach this topic in a successful way with their partner?
It's hard because how do you as a woman come across in a way that that helps a man understand that without sounding like you're trying to nag him or make him like you,
Yeah.
right? And I don't I think the hardest part about that is that you have to constantly do the gentle style parenting that you like. And I don't want to say it's easier for moms because it's I don't think that, because I mean kids are going to push you to the limits to where you're like, that's it, I'm done, um but I think that it comes across more natural in a nurturing mindset for most moms,
Yeah.
whereas dads don't run that. So I guess the things I suggest are always do that, always, and take the chance to talk about it.
Yeah.
Um, I think perhaps a lot of that comes back to seeing it in other men as well, seeing that there are strong men that are not afraid to be a teddy bear, like
Yeah.
that is where it's at, in my opinion. The moment men see that they can still be manly and savage and then see how that works at home,
Yeah.
that's where they can go, oh, okay. Because I think the biggest thing that they're afraid of is creating snowflakes or entitled children, because that's what I broach against. Like I was like, no, I'm not having a kid like that.
We're going to toughen you up,
That's right.
boy.
And yeah, it's what's crazy is, and that's the hard thing is, I find that it's more so men towards their sons, which
Yes.
means that those boys will become men who do that to their sons.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's I think for the advice I would give is if they're on Instagram, say, hey, have you seen this guy?
Yeah.
And I don't mean it has to be me. There's plenty of guys out
Yeah.
there, but if they start to follow my account, then that means that they'll be suggested other accounts of good dudes that are doing the same thing.
Nate, can you share with
Absolutely.
everyone where to find you online? You're awesome.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, number one place to find me is at Dads Don't Babysit. If you message me, I will answer. It may be a couple days, but I try to keep track of that. In fact, I love that. I love interacting with people. When people tell me that they've implemented things, or they're trying something, or things are I love that. Like, I've had plenty of times where I've sat and read messages to my wife and teared up and been like, this is happening. This is happening for people, and I love that. So
Yeah.
catch me there, and catch me at Dads Don't Babysit on Instagram, for sure.
Thanks so much for your time, Nate.
Absolutely.